Hey, Mayur, how you doing? Yes, I actually do have something. Can you hear me? I think you should be able to hear me, I guess. So the question is, can you please post video on swiftui interview questions? Um, Instead of the video, I actually collected a lot of questions regarding swiftui, and let me see if I can give you access to that. There are like 500 or even more questions, and you can download those questions for free. Let me find where those things are because I keep forgetting. I think it's on a different website. So let me give you the link for that. Let's see. Interview questions. Okay. Let me give you a link. Okay. So here is a book on interview questions. You can download it for free. There we go. And it has a lot of interview questions that you can enjoy, probably like 500 or even more. So hopefully that will help you with your interview questions. Yeah, if anyone has any question, you can just write on the chat and I can definitely take a look at the question. And if I know the answer, I'll tell you. Um, if I don't, I'll try to guide you somewhere else. And you can use the live chat to ask questions if you want to. Knowing the current market for iOS developer, which course of yours would say is the most important or must have? So let me actually go and take a look at these courses. Most of my courses, I would say, are overview courses, meaning if you go and take the course, then you will get information regarding a particular subject. So if I go to my courses, I think the first course that you should be taking if you are new into swiftui would be the swiftui fundamentals course. So let me copy address. And this is a free course, so that's actually good. You can get access to this free. I'm just going to put a link, free course. After that, you can take the course Consuming JSON API. Now, this is a pretty small course. So this is going to show you how you can access JSON API. And right after that, it's up to you because all of these courses are designed to stand alone. Like it really depends what you want to do. Like if you want to learn test-driven development, then you should learn through this course. If you want to learn, architecture for swiftui, I think this is actually a pretty latest course on swiftui architecture. So it really depends on your needs, what you're trying to learn. Most of my courses they're standalone. So depending on your needs, depending on the platform you want to learn, depending on the things that you're trying to learn, you can actually learn those. All right, so it's not a particular sequence that you have to go through. You can actually get that. What is the best foldering for making swiftui project, like the folder structure? Again, it depends on what kind of a project that you're working on. But if this is my swiftui application, let me see, why is it selecting that? There's no best, by the way. The question, what is the best foldering structure? So there's no answer to that because there's no best way to do anything. It really depends on your situation. It depends on your team. It depends on how the folder structure is already there. I mean, how you're structuring things. Um, so the answer is how I would structure it. What I would usually do when I'm creating a swiftui project, I would structure it in a way that I will have a folder called screens. Screens will have these are views but screens is a much bigger portion. So if this whole thing is a screen, I can say that this is, let's say, a customer list screen. So I should probably rename this as customer list screen. So screen are views. The only difference is that the screen represents the entire screen. And views can be smaller part. Like maybe there's a view over here to list the customer. Maybe there's a view over here to do something else with the customer. And views are mostly, when you create them, they're created with the mind in mind that they're going to be reused. While screens, when you create a screen, it's just one screen. So this whole thing will be one screen. So this is how I would like to structure. I like to structure at least screens and views. Now, other things can also go in there, like maybe you have services. So I can go over here and say services. These can be HTTP client, HTTP services. These can be some other services that you're connecting to. So those are perfectly fine. You can have, separate folder for extensions if you're writing extensions. Maybe you're creating an extension on a string. Maybe you're creating an extension on something else. So it really depends on the need for your project, and then you can create this kind of a folder structure. But I wouldn't say it's a best practice or the worst practice. I would say this is just how I do it. And as the application grows, then I can also move things around and I can create different folders. So that's at least the way that I build my application. I think if you've seen in the code that I'm sharing online, so these are the things that I do. But again, it depends. I mean, maybe if you're working in a company, maybe they already have some sort of a structure that you must follow, then obviously you have to follow those things. All right. So that's how I would do it. All right. Yeah, so this is how I usually do it. Like if I have to do create something, I would do it something like this. All right. And then if I need something else, like maybe I'm creating environment values, custom environment values, maybe I can add a group, custom environment values. Okay, there we go. So now I have a group called custom environment values, and it will hold all the environment values. All right, and so on. So depending on what I'm trying to add to the project, I would create a group for that, and I would add those things in there. Now, some people like to also, if they're working in a really complicated thing, I mean, models can also go over here, right? Like, I mean, if you have models, then you can go over here also, and so on. So it depends on the complexity of the app. For simple app, you can put all the models in the models folder. But if your models are divided based on the sections of the app, maybe the models are for inventory or fulfillment or catalog or payment gateway, then you can even create like separate groups in there. Like maybe you can say payments, right? And you can even create more stuff over here. Let's say catalog and so on. Other question is, do you use a coordinator pattern in your projects? Um, Coordinator pattern, I use a similar pattern. Again, it depending on the app. So if I go and show you, I think I have a very detailed article over here. If I go to articles, navigation patterns. So I'll give a link to you over here. There we go. And it's very similar to, I guess, the coordinator. And you can read more about it. There are many different ways that I discuss in this article about navigation, mainly for the programmatic or dynamic navigation. So you can definitely read this article. Um, if you're using tab views, it will be a little bit different. If you're using like plain application with a list going to a detail, so it will be different. But this can be used as a nice pattern, nice way to perform navigation. And I recently also created some videos of how you can manage multiple sheets, multiple models. So I need to write an article on that also. But the video should be available on my YouTube channel. So this is a nice article you can read and see if it helps you in your application. It's mainly for dynamic routes, meaning programmatic routes. If your application is quite simple and there's not much going on in terms of navigation, then you should just not use this approach, because this is for approach where it it is for dynamic routes over here. See that? So in some cases, you can actually create this environment value, and then you can simply navigate. So it kind of looks nicer. I think it's, so this is inspired from React, and in React, I think it's also called navigate. So in React, this is how you will perform navigation, dynamic navigation. All right. Is the domain-driven design still relevant? Do you still implement that? Again, depends on the app. Yes, it is still relevant. So if you're working in an application that has a very complicated domain like hospital or insurance system, then it's a good idea to have some sort of domain which consists of the rules and validation, and then it's what is it called? Ubiquitous language. Let me see actually. Yeah, I don't remember the name of that. Like basically translating the business rules into machine, into your code, into your Swift code or whatever language that you're using. So that is basically your domain models in the end. So yes, so if your application is complicated, it has complicated rules, then you should be putting those things in your domain model through the validation. All right. Thank you for the article. All right, thank you. Yeah, sure. Yeah, some of those things are discussed in my course, swiftui architecture, some of the navigation patterns. I think it's discussed somewhere at the bottom, validation, navigation. So here we go. You can see some of the things are discussed over here in the videos itself. All right, any other questions? Yeah, if you have any question, you can write in the chat and I'll be able to look at it and see if I can answer it. Yeah, in terms of the also the coordinator pattern, I would say when you're starting your application, just start with the minimum amount of code that you are writing that you need. Don't get stuck in different patterns. Are you gonna save this live on your YouTube channel? I think it's automatically saved. Yeah, so these things are automatically saved on YouTube, so you can always go back and I think see all the different live sessions that I've done. So you can always see those things. Let me actually visit my page and see what's going on over there. Because I think you can see those things. Live. Yeah, I did a couple of live sessions, live streams. Yeah, you can check out this link. I don't know if it's going to work on your, but you can check out this link. I think this will have all the live streams that I've done, and there are quite a bit of live streams. So I try to do this, once a week. All right. Considering all your experience so far, if you had the opportunity to start your career as an iOS instructor over again, what would you do differently? iOS instructor? So I'm not an iOS, well, that's not really my full-time job, I guess. I mean, I do have a full-time job, like as a coding bootcamp. I do teach web development as well as machine learning using Python. So the iOS work that I do on the is only on the side. If I have to start your career, if I have to start my career as an iOS instructor over again, what would I do differently? Um, iOS instructor, which is basically on my own website and Udemy. What would I do differently? Mm, I'm not really sure what would I do differently because of what I wanted to do, I'm already doing it. I'm definitely creating these courses. I'm hosting workshops, and that's really what I wanted to do. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what I would do differently if I had to start over as an iOS instructor. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'm not sure. Oops, what's going on over here? Is GitHub down or something? Looks like GitHub is down again. It might be down. We'll see. Yeah, definitely something weird going on. All right. Yeah, something weird going on with GitHub. Yeah. Maybe one thing I would do is I would also spend a little bit more time in hosting like more, even though I think there are more workshops. I mean, I think it's already. Uh, so one thing I would do maybe a little bit differently is usually what I do is I create the course. It takes a lot of time and then I release it. But with Superbase, what I'm doing is I am releasing the sections as soon as I'm done. And maybe that is a technique that I should be using for all of my courses. So, so that is maybe one thing I would do. All right. So what is the definition of modular? How can the project called defined as a modular project? Um, Modular project, as far as I know, what they mean by modular project, I mean, and they have different definitions, is they're dividing their project based on the context. So they might have different modules, meaning even frameworks that are added, and one module might be doing something with HTTP client. One module might be to share the data as DTO, data transfer object. One module might be having the logic for some system. Um, so maybe that is what they mean by modular. This is for very large applications. Um, I would say already seen a lot of applications that are very small and they try to divide it. And I think that's a big mistake because you're adding a complexity that your application doesn't need just on the assumption that it will need it in the future. This is kind of like I'm building a to-do list application and I'm saying that, oh, I need what is that called? Wow, totally blanked out. Not serverless, microservices. Yeah. So if I'm creating a to-do list application or a really simple application and I'm like, okay, I need microservices. No, I don't need microservices. So why should we even bother by making things complicated if they don't want to be? Gabriel is asking, and in your career, if I have to start my career over again, what would I do differently? I think one of the things that I always regret, I guess, not doing is reading books. I think that's such a uh, thing that is just fading away in general. Like nobody reads books anymore, right? And there is just so much information in these books, articles, and which are just there, and people are just not reading them because they're consumed by social media. They're consumed by some other things. At least, I mean, for me, I'm doing these courses and all that. Um, so definitely, I think one thing I would do just in my life in general is I would read more books. And I've started reading a little bit more, but still not as much as I would like to be because I'm always working on these courses. And I'm starting to read it, but it takes me so much time to read a book, and then I'm just working on something else. But I'm starting to get into at least, you know, want to read more books, and I need to find at least 15-30 minutes just a day, just to read a book. So the other question is, so don't make it over engineering to a simple project. This goes for any project. I think you should always start simple, and once your project complexity is increasing, then you can just change it and you can increase it. I mean, everybody is when they saw, oh, Netflix and Google, they're using microservices, then all of these companies who are not doing anything similar to what Netflix is doing or what Google is doing, they're like, okay, we need microservices. You don't need microservices for simple things. So they just keep on making things complicated. And we see that, right, in swiftui development also. People are doing this, oh, let me add this, let me add that, let me add 30 different layers and repositories and presenter and coordinators and routers and this and that, and just keep it simple. How about we start really simple? If things are getting complicated, then we can take a look at that. Because all the things that we have learned previously, remember the clean architecture, we learn about, oh, presentation layer, logic layer, and this layer and that layer, and we have data access layer, and we have repository layer. Those things are not going to work when you're creating React or Flutter or SwiftUI applications, because the complete stack that you're using is changed. It's much more a modern stack. So you have to adapt to those things. You can't just start adding like 11 different layers to your React project or SwiftUI project because 20 years ago you learned about these layers. Now, those layers might be important in some other project. Maybe you're doing ASP.NET, and maybe you are doing some Java application and you want to connect and share with other services. That's fine. But most of the time when you're creating these apps in React, Flutter, and SwiftUI, you want to keep it simple and you want to use the tools that are provided by SwiftUI framework. So, you know, try to keep things simple. 5 top tips for beginner iOS developer. Keep your code simple. That's the first tip. Read books. That's the second tip. Write code every single day. Even if you're writing it for 15-20 minutes, just write something. Fourth, work on your projects that you're passionate about. The best way to learn something is to work on something. So if you are interested in, oh, I'm into fitness. So okay, go ahead and build a fitness app. And the amount of things that you're going to learn by creating fitness app, that you will see. I mean, it will be amplified, meaning it will be 10 times more things you're going to learn, because you'll be like, okay, well, how do I connect to this API? How do I save into a database? All of these things I don't know. Okay, well, I'm going to learn it. All right. And 5 is community. So make sure that you're part of the iOS community. You are sharing your information. You're also helping out other people. So these are, I would say, 5 tips for beginner iOS developers. You need to, market yourself. You need to share your information. You need to learn. You need to code. So all of those things help. And community. So if you have a local community for iOS developers, maybe you're living in an area where they meet physically, I would say go over there. Like every time they have a meeting, go there, say hello, meet them, talk about like what you're doing, learn from them. And I think these kind of connections are definitely going to help you in landing your new job. And because in the end, it's all about connections. All right, can you explain how SwiftUI wants you to build your navigation? Is it okay to have nested navigation stack or do you want to have one global navigation stack? It really depends. I would say start really simple, like don't use any pattern like router and coordinator, depending on the app. Try to make things very simple. And I have written an article on navigation. You can check it out. Navigation patterns in swiftui. And maybe next week we can probably do a session on, like I'll show you the actual code, but you can read this. And in this article, I covered a lot of different patterns that I have seen or I implemented with, swiftui navigation. Now, would you need those patterns for your application to work? You can not use those patterns and your application will still work, so that will be okay. So I would say don't use any patterns when you're creating navigation. Try to just go with the flow, keep it basic, and maybe then there will be time when your application is getting bigger. Then you can think about, okay, hold on a second, can I make it more centralized? Like maybe all of my routes are in one place, like a React application. So in those cases, yes, you can look into these patterns. But if your app is simple, I would say just use the patterns that Apple is using. Don't go anything crazy. Don't do anything crazy, okay? Because most of the time what we do is whenever we add a certain pattern, a certain architecture, we are adding a lot of complexity which you may not need. Now, in some application, you actually may need those things, but when the time comes, you can always update your app to add those set of complexity. I think one of the things, let me actually see if I remember correctly. I think it's in the Slack group, if I can find it. Like one of the things that I recently shared is how do we handle sheets, right? And I have a video on this. You can check my YouTube channel. And this technique, you don't really need this technique, but if your app is getting bigger and you have a sheet, like a modal in your swiftui view, which is all over the place, then you can centralize this. So you can see over here, I created a custom environment value, show sheet. And then whenever I want to show a sheet, I just call show sheet, right? And all of this is handled somewhere over here, I believe. You have to watch the video, I guess, but yeah, it's only handled one place in the whole application. It's only handled in one place. Now, do you need that when you're starting the app? No, of course not. This is additional complexity that you're adding. Would you need that if your application is getting a little bit more complicated? You have sheets all over the place? Okay, yes, maybe. All right. So start with simple. Whenever you write code, it's not right you're writing code with stone or on stone. You can always change that. All right. So I have to write an article on that still. You can see you have to add these all things, and this becomes a little bit more complicated, although you have to do it only once. And then the way that you display sheet becomes super simple. But again, this simplicity you get from adding some complicated code, and then you achieve this simplicity, which you may or may not need in your application. So it really depends. I mean, it really depends. I'll probably be writing an article on that so that you will have a much better idea what I'm talking about. But there is a YouTube video I already recorded. Actually, it's a pretty detailed video. Let me see if I can find that. Communication, where is this? Kind of hard to see. Let me find that video. I think I already published that video. Let's see. Okay. It's called Global Sheets in swiftui, and I will write an article on that also. But again, this is just a pattern. You may or may not need it. Again, keep things simple. Maybe in your app you will need that, maybe you won't. Depends. All right. Let me check from Twitter. Maybe there are questions coming in from Twitter also. Okay, what is this question from Twitter? Workshops. Can you tell me about the workshops that you're hosting? Okay, so the question from Twitter is, can you tell me about the workshops that you're hosting? Yeah, so the workshop that I host, which is over here, workshops, these are live workshops on Zoom, and they are around like 3 hours long. They go, I mean, it's all coding. Like you will be doing a lot of coding in these workshops, and you'll be doing a lot of activities. Those activities can be like maybe 10 minutes to 15 minutes long. Activity simply means that you'll be working on something. And like this one is coming up, I think tomorrow. Yeah, this one is tomorrow, which is from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., which is for machine learning in iOS. So how to train models using CreateML and then integrate it into your iOS application. And apart from that, I have other workshops that are coming in, which is server-side Swift using Vapor. It's on September 7. Again, it's going to be 3 hours long. Routing, MVC pattern, database integration, consuming API, Swift data fundamentals, testing, and then I think eventually it's introduction to Superbase. So I don't think that person on Twitter is over here, but if they are, they can look at the workshops over here. All right. All right. Any other questions that I can answer? And another thing for beginner developers is you can always go to Stack Overflow. I think that's one of the best ways to learn. Let me, I wonder if I can actually go in incognito mode or does it allow me to? Yeah, so if you go, I don't think I can search, right? swiftui. Bicycle, okay, let's see. All right, this is another great way to learn. If you want to learn something, go to Stack Overflow, click on newest questions based on swiftui, since I guess you're learning swiftui, and try to answer these questions. Because the great thing about these questions are these are real questions from real people sitting at real work and trying to solve these problems, right? So these are real questions coming from, uh, coming from people. So just once a day, maybe one question a day, and maybe you can answer one question, and now you know one additional thing. And I think the good thing about Stack Overflow or answering these questions is if you don't know the answer, then somebody else will post the answer, and then you will know the answer. See that? So if you're answering this question about some Swift UI JSON fetch from something, you don't know the answer, you're going to try it out, okay, you're going to do some research, you don't know the answer, not a big problem because this person actually posted the answer. So now you know the answer also. So it's a win-win situation. All right. For the Swift data, is there an example for UI kit? I think I did that. Let me see if I did it for UI kit. I have a very detailed article on Swift data. I'm not sure if I covered UI kit. Okay, I did cover part of UI kit. So you can look at that. Swift data UI kit. It's a small section related to UI kit. Is computer science fundamental topic like computer network, system design, operating system question asked by startups even for entry jobs? I think it really depends on the startup. Um, like I think if you're going to go to one of those FANG companies like Facebook and Amazon and Google and Apple and all that stuff, then they will be asking you more questions related to data structures and algorithms. So you will have to prepare for that. Will they be asking questions for computer network system design? I don't think these questions are for beginners like system design and all those questions. Operating system question, they will ask like if you are actually going to some sort of a position where you will be working at that level, meaning operating system, maybe compiler, and all those deeper level. So they will be asking those questions. But I think most of the time when you go to these jobs interview, they will be asking you questions related to data structures and algorithms. So you should prepare for that. And I think there is a good book to prepare for that. Let me, oh boy, let's see over here. This is kind of hard, right? I mean, what is this? I don't even know what this is. I think it's called Cracking the Coding Interview. Yeah, so here's the book. It's called Cracking the Coding Interview 189 Programming Questions and Solutions. So, this book is about obviously interview questions and how to deal with those interview questions. So, let me see if I can share the link. Cracking the Coding Interview. So that can definitely help because algorithm related questions, the only way you can get better is by practice, because it's kind of test out a different part of your brain, because that's not what we do all day, right? I mean, if we're working in swiftui or iOS development, then we're working with lists and we're working with APIs and things like that. But our that part of a brain which deals with data structure and algorithm, that's not really exercised that much. So that's going to definitely help you to look at that. All right. Any other questions? Let me check with Twitter. There's one question. What will be your new course? Well, the new course, as I guess you can already see, the new course that I'm working on is super base course, and it's still not done. So I still have some sections that are remaining. Once this is done, I will see what new course I have to create. Vision Pro is a good option, so probably I'll go with Vision Pro. I also want to cover a small course on Swift Swift testing library, the new one that just came out, and I think so. Vision Pro and Swift testing are in the list. I'm following MVVM design pattern iOS using SwiftUI. When I reach on bank app for backend, I'm not found Express.js. In bank app and not found Express.js. Following the MVVM design pattern, when I reach on bank app, not found Express.js. Okay, if you can send me the link, I can definitely check it out. I'm not sure why it's not there. It's hosted on the same server. Sometime it can take maybe a few seconds for the server to warm up, so that can be the case, but it should be there. So it should be there. All right, and everything is hosted on Glitch, so it's on a free account. So that's why it takes a little bit of time to warm up the server. But once it warm up, then you can actually access that. Would you still recommend Realm DB? I've been learning it and building apps with, haven't enjoyed it. If you enjoy it, then it's fine. I think Swift data is very similar to Realm. So if I had a choice, I would stay with Apple, which means Swift data. But I guess if your application is already Realm and it is already you have already been using Realm, then yeah, you will have to stay with Realm. But yeah, if I had a choice to choose um, between Realm, if I'm starting a new app and I have to choose between Realm and Swift Data, I will choose Swift Data because it's from Apple, and I'll get much, I think better support. I'm from India. Can you speak Hindi from where? I speak Urdu, which is kind of like Hindi. Yeah, I'm originally from Pakistan. So yeah, and I do play cricket. I know that we all love cricket, right? Every Sunday I play cricket. A friendly, casual game, nothing crazy. I don't think there's any cricket matches going on right now. Uh, well, there is going on something. It's like a South Africa versus West Indies, but that's like a test match. Okay. Hmm. Is combine really an important thing? Combine has been a little bit fading away. I think there are some aspects of combine that are important because I don't know if those are available just in plain Swift UI. And one of those is the ability to hold the request from being sent. I think it's called bouncing or throttling or bouncing. Those kind of things are available. Um, in terms of integrating combine into like just doing like a functional programming aspect, I would not do that because I mean, Swift UI, plain vanilla Swift UI is just, you can just use that without integrating with publishers and subscribers and these kind of things. So uh, I would just, you can look at Combine, but I would not go out of my way to integrate Combine in my Swift UI application unless there is some functionality in Swift UI where I need Combine. And I think one of those functionality is um, I think it's called bouncing, or I don't remember the exact word, where you don't send the request. Uh, like when you type in the text box, it doesn't send the request immediately. It kind of waits for a couple of seconds. I think it's called I don't remember, throttling or something. So those things are available in Combine. Let's say someone start career as an iOS engineer, and let's say they work for 12, 15 years being an engineer. What post that is? Again, it's a question from Aditya Gautam. So if they are work for 12, 15 years being an engineer, so let's say someone starts their career as an iOS engineer and let's say they work for 12, 15 being an engineer, what post that is? It depends on the company. Um, if they are engineer and not doing iOS, then if they're if they're joining, what position would that be? I guess it really depends how much they know iOS. But if they are already working in iOS for 12, 15 years, that's I mean that's as a lead. They should be like a senior or a lead at that point. If they have worked for 12, 15 years as an iOS developer, but then they will be kind of like a lead. Uh, okay, let's see. The Pritam Dali has a question. The other day, I had an argument with another fellow iOS engineer about using different backend framework, but he differed otherwise. What is your take on it? Well, it depends on what kind of. I mean, I would not do an argument or anything. I think you can have a discussion, like friendly discussion. Um, what kind of backend frameworks? So, if somebody asks me what kind of backend framework I would use, I would personally use the things that I am comfortable with, and that will be Node.js and Express.js. I'm comfortable with that. Um, so it really depends. If your team environment is .NET development, if you're doing .NET, um, C sharp, then probably you are going to go with ASP.NET Web API because that's the environment that you want to work in because that's what your team knows. I mean, they're not going to go out of the way to learn Django or Ruby on Rails. That's going to take some time. So it really depends. The backend framework really depends like what kind of company you're working in and what is their strength. Maybe the developers you were talking to, maybe they were already a really good Django developer or Rails developer, and um, they wanted to create the backend in Rails, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, I would do the same thing. I would not go out of my way to implement backend in Rails or Django because I don't know those things. I have to learn those things. Uh, I can create backend easily using Node.js because that's what I know. I can create using Vapor. That's what I know. So I would choose those things. And I think you'll see that in the long term, it doesn't really matter what kind of framework that you're using. I mean, the shiny things. Just use the things that you know. I mean, you can go ahead and create your own backend in PHP, and that would be fine too if you know PHP. All right. So I would use the skills that you already have to create backend in those things. In the things. All right. Unlike the web programming engineering managers, the opening for mobile engineering managers is quite less. How does one grow in that way? So that's a good question. And I think the reason is that when you go to work at a company, um, their mobile team is usually very small and it's also composed of mainly senior developers and not junior developers. All right. So how does one grow in that way? It depends again, it depends on the company. I mean, if you have hit the ceiling of growth in your company, um, obviously you should make it clear to your manager, your leader, your supervisor that what can you do to go to the next step. Like, what is the expectation from you to grow and to step into the next role, next ladder, or not next ladder, next step of the ladder, I guess. And if their answer is like vague, that they just don't know what to do, then probably it's a good idea to start looking for position where there's a lot of mobile development going on. All right. So that would be obviously what I would do. I would not leave the job before I have another job in my hand. So that's another thing you have to think about. I've been learning Redux based on your tutorial, but is there any package you can recommend similar to how I can use how I can do it in Angular or React? Angular or React? Well, I've used Redux in React. I have used the Redux library. Now I know that Redux is also built into React as a form of reducer. You can use that also. So I think it's called React Redux, React Redux maybe. Let's see. No, not that. Uh, Redux built in React. I think it's called like a reducer or something. So this is Redux. So I've used this one, which is Redux, the separate independent package in React JS. But reducers are now built in. I don't remember what it's called. It's called Redux reducers or reducers in React. So you can use reducers also. I'm sure they're a little bit different, but you can use reducers also in React, which will come with map state to props and map dispatch to props and all that stuff. Do you know a sure way to get freelance or contract iOS gigs? Upwork and other websites don't work. It's a race to the bottom. Yes. So Corey asked that a way to get freelance or contract gigs. So the best way to get contract gigs is to connect with the community around surrounding you. So let's say if you're in Philadelphia, they have a very active iOS community. So start attending that community. Maybe even do a speaking engagement. Tell them that you're looking for freelance gig, but mostly you're going to land those freelance gig based on your connections. And since you are in US, if you are going against someone who is in South Asia, then it's a race to the bottom, as you said. So connections in those cases is definitely very, very important that you make those connections early on. Um, and also try to see that if you have something online, Like if you have maybe writing articles, you're publishing your apps, you have GitHub repository. If you have GitHub repository, then the README file should look really good. You are working on some open source projects, you have your portfolio. So make sure that those all things are easily available for users. If you have an app on the App Store, then maybe there's a video that you created about the app. Maybe there's screenshots, so I don't have to download the app. Maybe I can just click the video and I can see the recording. Oh, this is how the app works. This is how the app looks. Because as a recruiter, I don't have time to download apps for every single person I'll be interviewing, right? But if I want to just quickly see your skill set, I can just watch a small, 15, 20 seconds or 30 seconds recording of the app that you built, and I can have a much better idea of how the app works and also about the skills that you have. And then I'll be more inclined towards giving a call. All right. Faris is asking, can your navigation pattern implemented in UIKit? UIKit, I don't know if you actually need these kind of navigation patterns because you have access to the navigation controller. So you can just do the navigation, just use the navigation controller just like the old way. Have you worked on protocol buffer in my complete over JSON? I have not worked with protocol buffer, so I don't know. I've never worked with that. I've heard about that, but I've never worked with that. I don't think the navigations are good and simple. Even with the latest version of swiftui, we can't simply say push, pop. I don't think it's a good idea to use view modifier to set the destination. Um, it depends what kind of app that you're building, but if you just want to, there's so many different ways of performing these navigation. So I have used this one and I have written this article on navigation patterns, and we can kind of like simplify how the navigation happens. It will be a little bit different if you're working with tab views versus an app that does not use tab views. So without the tab views is actually nice and simple. It actually kind of looks like, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so without the tab views, see that how simple it is. I mean, obviously there's a code behind it, which is a little bit more complicated, but this is inspired from React router DOM because this is how React performed the navigation using React hooks. So I just use that approach, and you can create navigation as simple as this. All right. And there's an article I think I already posted. You can read that article. Yeah, as soon as you add tab views, then it becomes a little bit more complicated because now each tab has to have its own navigation stack. So I covered that also. It becomes a little bit weird. So let's see. I don't know if I have a code over here for, well, I do have code for navigation, but it becomes a little bit different. All right. And this is only for dynamic programmatic navigation. If you're just doing navigation where you click a cell, then you can do that. That's the problem. You have to implement environment and you have to add logic for navigation. Well, there has to be logic for navigation. So I mean, how else would it navigate, I guess? So let's see. Let's see, where is the logic for navigation? Router. And logic for navigation is actually pretty simple also. Navigator push, view from UIKit wrapper. Yeah, I guess you can do that also if you can do navigator.push. It's similar to that part. I mean, we are doing that somewhere, I think, in the code. I think for tab view navigation, I'm actually doing something similar. Let's see. Router. Yeah, I think it's over here. You can see it's for tab views, I'm doing something similar like this. All right. And you have the router on the top. So that works in tab view because in tab view you have multiple things, multiple routes. So I'm just making sure that each of these route arrays are handled differently or separately because each will be on different tabs. So that allows us to perform these kind of navigation. And you can even nest, if you have a very complicated navigation, you can even nest it. So I think I have some sort of a enum that allows us to nest the navigation also. Let's see, I think it's somewhere over here. Handle patient, yeah. So routes can even be, you can see over here, they can even be nested. So if you have navigation based on patient versus doctor, and they're like completely going to a different section of the screen, then you can even nest these kind of things. All right. Mostly now, how do you look? I'm thinking about future opportunity in macOS development. Mostly now macOS is used by companies. How do you look about this idea? Yeah, it's always good to learn macOS development, but I think your primary case will always be iOS or mobile development, which runs on your phone and iPads, because unless it's a shop that is explicitly doing macOS development, I don't think many shops like oil and gas company, finance company, retail company, they will ever be saying, oh, let's go ahead and create a Mac app so that our customers can run this app on their Mac. It's rare, right? Because they want to target more customers, and a lot of customers have, those iPhones. So they're probably going to go as a quantity. They're going to go with an iOS app. For Mac OS, they're just gonna, if something has to run on a Mac, they'll just create a website for it. But yes, if the company is creating tools for Mac like Panic and all of those other companies, then yes, obviously you need to know Mac OS development. Another question is, do you think MV is better than MVVM? I think both are great. People see the MV as the MVC, but you can write clean code with MVC and MV also. Just create another struct and class and decouple all the logic. I talked about this actually, MV and MVVM, in a very long article that I wrote, this one. And the whole idea that I was presenting is it really depends on the app that you're working on. But I think one of the things that people were doing is that whenever they created a screen or a view, they added a view model. So this means if you have 50 different screens, 50 different view models, and that becomes impossible to manage. So what I'm saying is that if you're creating a screen, your view model, if you're creating, should not depend on because you added a new screen, but it should depend on the data that is being utilized or used by the screen. And that is what I'm proposing over here in my very long article, that sometimes your screen can just, or your view can just directly access HTTP client and then load the articles and then display the articles. Sometimes it's just as simple as this. All right. Other times where you want to get the data, store the data in the memory because it will be used by 5 or 6 different views. Maybe they want to update it, maybe they want to filter it, maybe they want to delete it, and things like that. Then in those cases, you can build something like this. Store model is a horrible choice name. I can show you this code. I guess this is straight away coming from Apple. So this code is from Apple. I can write it over here. There we go. So in Apple, there's the food truck application. And what they're doing, they're calling it model. Again, I would not call it model. I'll call it store. There we go, store, just to correct some of the things and some of the confusions. So food truck store, observable object, and this food truck store gives the whole application the state. So the complete application that you have is utilizing just one food truck store to get the data. And I think that makes it super simple, because anytime the orders are going to be added or removed, or donuts are going to be added or removed, then the views that are depending on that collection, they will automatically get updated. They're also using, you can see they're using a client, HTTP client over here. You can pass it as a dependency. Apple is just showing you without passing dependencies because they don't have any protocol and everything like that. But I think this is a nice pattern. And once your application is getting bigger, then you can add multiple stores that can provide you different kind of data. And I think that's the hard part, that how are you going to divide the store? Well, you divide the store the based on the bounded context. I think it's somewhere down over here. Let's see. Yeah, see that? So this can be catalog store, this can be inventory store, ordering store, shipping store, and so on. So you can have like 5 different stores, and each store is responsible for providing you with some sort of a data like inventory or ordering or catalog or shipping, instead of 500 view models for every single screen. So that makes it a little bit more easier to manage. All right. Sir, many beginnings ask me, learning UIKit worth it, or go all in swiftui for an entry-level job? It's again becoming Objective-C Swift. I would like to know your opinion. So UIKit versus swiftui, I think that's a hard question to answer, because it again depends on the company that you're trying to join. If the company has a lot of code, which mostly is the case, then that code will be written in UIKit. And if you're working in that code, then you need to know that code also, or how UIKit works. If you are trying to join a brand new startup or a company who is starting a brand new project, then SwiftUI would be a better choice. So depending on where you're going to join the company, UIKit might be important or SwiftUI might be important. One thing you can do is, again, it's hard to tell because it really depends on the type of job that you're going to go and type of company that you're joining. So if you get a call from some startup who are like, oh, we haven't really written any line of code, we are just going to start when we hired you, then maybe SwiftUI is a better choice, because probably they're going to use SwiftUI in those cases. But you can always separate it out to be, okay, I'll be learning every day. I'll be spending 75% of the time in SwiftUI and 25% with UIKit. Or if you want to join some established company with their projects that are already in place, then UIKit, I'll be spending 50% time on UIKit, or 75% on UIKit and 25% on SwiftUI. So it's a balancing act that you'll have to do. I would say maybe you should spend time to learn both of them so that you're more open to different job opportunities. Any thoughts on KMP taking over for writing view model for iOS? I have not used KMP, so I have no idea about that. Kotlin multi-platform, I guess, but I have no idea. Have you worked or idea about async display kit? Now is texture is created by Facebook, by now maintained by Pinterest. Currently my company is, no, I have not used async display kit. So also that, I have no idea about that also. All right, everyone. Well, it's been 1 hour. It's been nice talking to you. A lot of questions. That is great. And hopefully we can do this every single week. If you have any other questions, then I would say hold on to those questions, and we can answer next week. But thank you everyone for joining, and you can find more information about myself. You can go to my website, which is azamsharp.com. This is where I host my articles. I have a YouTube channel also. I have courses, which you have already seen. A lot of different courses are there. One thing I like to mention over here is, because some people have actually asked me on Twitter, is workshops which are individually priced. But if you want to get access to all the workshops for free, then I have added a new feature over here that you get all the workshops if you sign up, become an annual member. So this includes the free workshops. So this is, I think, a great plan, which gives you access to all the future workshops. So, and you'll get the recording, you'll get the code and everything. So I think that's a pretty good option. But anyway, that is pretty much it. Hope you have enjoyed today's session, and I will see you next week. Thank you all for coming.